Do I remember how I felt? I mean, I vividly remember waking up. I have young children. I woke up at about 5 in the morning and looked at my phone, and it could see that it was overwhelmingly going to be leave. So it wasn't the result officially, but it was kind of this clear likelihood that it was going to happen. I don't know how I felt. I guess I felt a sort of a slight sense of sort of vertigo, a sense of things just sort of falling away a bit. I think that's kind of, maybe that often happens when a big negative event happens. You're sort of excited, but also there's suddenly a sense of things changing very fast. Because things don't change that much generally, or they change slowly, but then suddenly events can accelerate sometimes. So I felt excited, and I didn't feel worried. It was more physical than that, I think. And then went down and turned on the TV. Does the country feel different now? You know, all these cliches that we talk about at the moment are true in terms of our bubbles and the places that we live. I live in East London. I live next to a big university. It's overwhelmingly young. It's overwhelmingly London focused. It's ethnically diverse. I think Tower Hamlets, where I live, voted 75 or 77% to remain. It doesn't feel different when I sort of wake up in the morning and sort of walk around my neighborhood. It's taught me something. I think it's taught me to think rather differently about Britain and British politics. It's made me think in much longer term. It's made me think about, Britain joined the European community in 1973 at a time of sort of national vulnerability and economic stagnation in the early 1970s. It was a sort of a time when people were still within a few years' memory of having the empire. There was a sense of the country losing a former role and probably scared of losing its status, and asked to join, this European project. And here we are 45 years later at a different moment in our history. So I suppose it's made me reflect a lot more on what kind of a country Britain became in the 19th and 20th centuries, and now what it thinks it might become in the 21st century. So I guess it's made me look back and consider how the country changes. No, I haven't thought about taking another passport. I think that's partly just because I can't. There's no one in my family from another European country where that would be possible. My mum is Canadian. I could get a Canadian passport. I used to have one. It expired. I have thought about my Canadian passport since Brexit. It feels like I've got that old one in my desk. It sometimes feels like it's sort of burning a little hole in the desk. So yes, of course, it makes you think about your access to the world and your ability to take part in other countries and other cultures. I think if you've had the privilege of being able to do that in the past, you feel it very keenly when that comes into question. The Brexit dream is dying. And was there a dream in the first place? look, everyone has their own reading of what happened. I think that one thing that people don't think about, or that they forget, is that Brexit as a political answer, or as a policy suggestion, is extremely radical. We had a general election in this country in 2015, and none of the major parties had it as part of their manifesto. The Conservatives didn't have it, Labour didn't have it, the Liberal Democrats didn't have it, UKIP had it. UKIP have 2 MPs, or had 2 MPs at that time. It was not something like paying for the NHS, or paying for schools, or paying for renewing the nuclear missile system that was somewhere in the mainstream of British political conversation. Leaving the European Union until the Brexit referendum was an ideal, a dream of a very small and a very particular group of politicians, overwhelmingly on the right, although there were, always been a small faction on the left, that it would somehow release Britain from a path that it should not have gone down 45 years ago. And it would somehow remedy the problems, or liberate the country, and allow it to fulfill its, potential, in inverted commas. And that, when Boris Johnson refers to the Brexit dream, I think that's what he's referring to. So this political dream or utopian idea of what Brexit might be is really held by a very small group of political actors. And then when we had the referendum, that, if you like, rather pure dream, which is, I think, mainly about, it's maybe a libertarian argument about being free of the European Union, or it could be an economic argument that Britain should pursue a more Anglo-Saxon, low tax, more capitalist path than the rest of sort of socially democratic Europe. That ideological dream became attached to a much broader and more instinctive political argument about the country and how you feel it's going. So I don't know how many people ever shared the Brexit dream. I think for a few exciting weeks during the referendum, where the Leave campaign campaigned brilliantly, they managed to intoxicate many people with, I don't think that specific dream, but with sound bites that sounded like it, like taking back control, or inserting £350 million a week into the NHS, or, very, popular notions. Is it dying now? We're certainly seeing how the dream of what I maintain to have been a small group of people who thought they knew everything, who thought they knew the EU inside out, is now being confronted with the immensely complicated politics and logistics of how, the 6th largest economy in the world interacts with its largest trading partners and takes part in, the geopolitics of the world. This isn't something you can do in sort of 20 minutes on the back of an envelope. So the dream is encountering reality. I suppose personally, I'm fortunate to work as a journalist and to be trying to write about this moment. So I suppose my personal response, or the personal impact of Brexit, has been to make me feel a rather urgent necessity to try and try and understand this moment, and also to kind of to translate it. Brexit is very boring. It's very technical. It's a very sort of divisive subject that people see their own feelings inside and are also simultaneously greatly fatigued by. And I suppose since the vote, really, particularly since that first weekend after the vote, I really remember feeling a deep feeling to need to address this moment and to write about it in a clear way, and to be to be humble about it as well, because in the build up to the referendum, I happened to be reporting a story which involved me traveling a lot around the country and going to places in the west and the north, in rural communities and towns, and everywhere I would see signs for leave, and then I would retreat back to London, and I would read the polls and look on the internet and be reassured by my own environment and think, it's not going to happen. It'll be close, but it won't happen. And I literally sort of disbelieved the evidence of my own eyes, and so it's forced me to confront that and to work harder, I guess. One word, I'm tense. I'm tense. I don't know what's going to happen, and I feel that we are at a moment of crisis, in the sense that we've had 2.5 years since the vote. We're entering the climactic phase of the negotiations now, and a feeling of stability, or a sense that a compromise can come of this, or that there can be a solution that satisfies a reasonable majority of the country. That has been the political intention since the morning of the result. This is doable, and it need not damage people's livelihoods terribly, and it answers the democratic impulse of the nation, which is extremely significant. And we've told ourselves for the last couple of years that this can be done, and now we're at the moment of finding out whether that's possible. And I genuinely don't know that it is, and I wonder whether we're about to enter another phase now of rapid change and rapid developments, and another feeling of vertigo. That's what I feel at the moment. Who will benefit from Brexit? It's a really hard one. It's hard because, and I find myself, when I think about Brexit, you alternate between these two modes of thinking. One is small and day-to-day and immediate, and one is sort of larger and sort of trying to see things in a kind of in a broader perspective. Who will benefit from Brexit at the moment? And this is a sad thing to say, but I think it's true, is that people who will benefit from Brexit are people who benefit from instability. And people who benefit from instability, in my mind, they are... Some populist politicians have done well out of Brexit. Some media people have done well out of Brexit. It's a time of kind of stories and anxiety. And then people who benefit from instability tend to be the citizens of the world, the ones who can move themselves and move their capital wherever they want. And they can see that British companies are underpriced at the moment because No one knows what's going to happen to this country, and so they can invest, or they can move their money out, or they can buy property, or they can sell property, or they're able to be quite indifferent to the outcome, but be able to benefit from the situation of flux and doubt. I don't think many people who voted for Leave, and many people generally, are in that situation. So I don't see the general population benefiting from Brexit. That's in the kind of, when I see things going from kind of month to month or the next couple of years. But I do have this voice in my head about Brexit, which is to do with democracy, and which is to do with listening to the majority. You can't really get yourself into a headspace where, if this is the system that we use to govern ourselves, that you think that the majority is wrong, or the majority is stupid, or that the majority can't be right again. It's immensely complicated, and no one knows the answer to these questions, but since the financial crisis in 2008, we've seen this kind of long rolling wave moving through the world's political systems, democracies and autocracies. And I do think that Brexit is our own British version of it. It's a really weird one. It's this radical policy idea held by a small group of people. It's a bit like if California voted on a nutty proposition to abolish tax or something like that. We've been led into a curious expression of what across Europe and across the Western world is a feeling of dissatisfaction with democratic establishments and lightly regulated international capitalism, and Brexit is what's landed in our lap. It's not great. I don't like the look of it, but we may, over time, it may be that we got off lightly, or it may be that, I don't know. I do a bunch of reporting about this and about the European Union. You go and spend time at an EU summit where people stay awake until 6 o'clock in the morning, bullying each other and hammering out migration quotas for desperate African migrants coming across the Mediterranean or risking their life coming through the Balkans. And we're at a very, very complicated moment. And I don't think we can overlook the possibility that in 10, 20 years' time, Brexit might have been the instinctive, correct call. I just don't know, and I feel like we have to be open to that rather than close our minds to the feelings of the people that we share our country with.